contacted my friends at Asvine, a Chinese pen company, and I asked them if they could send me this pen because I was fascinated by it. This is the Asvine P36. It's a piston-filled pen made of acrylic and titanium, and I actually got some review requests for this particular pen. I was quite fascinated by it because it reminded me of another pen, and I'll do a shootout at some point between the two. Piston filled though, and not a cone-head filling system, but it certainly, I've seen the design before. No way negative comment, I'm just saying. This pen is a piston filler, so it works a little differently from a cone-head, although it looks a bit like a cone-head. There are other pen manufacturers like Pen BBS who have created a variation on the cone-head filling system. This is not one of them, so there are no accusations here, there's nothing. I'm just saying this pen looks a bit like a cone-head. I've been playing around with this pen. It comes with a nice range of nibs. I put a 1.1 millimeter nib on mine, or at least I requested that, I got that. And it's a really pleasant writer, I have to say that. I've been having a lot of fun with this pen. So I'm going to cover the parts of the pen. I'll do a writing sample. I'll tell you what I like about it, what I don't like about it. But first of all, a very kind thank you to Asvine for sending me this pen. I really appreciate it. Let's see what this is all about. Okay, here we go with the Asvine P36. Show you the box. I quite like the Asvine boxes. The only problem is the cardboard outer sleeves are a little hard to open, so I tend to use a letter opener like that because you rip and shred otherwise. That was previous injury. I end up typically throwing out these cardboard sleeves because they rip and tear so easily that it's no point for me to keep them. You get this cute sort of frosted plastic box that I do actually quite like. They're quite useful. You get a fountain pen instruction manual with instructions on how to fill the pen, which is very helpful. Not everyone has used a fountain pen before. There is a pen condom, and there are some notes on how to use the pen and what not to do with your pen on the back, which is useful too, because not everybody may realize you should not use alcohol to clean your pens. Okay, let's talk about the actual pen. I shall grab it. Here we go. I shall zoom in a bit, and I shall put it next to a Pilot Metropolitan. Let's talk a little bit about the pen, then I'll show you the parts, and we'll have a conversation, and then we'll do a writing sample. So this is the Asvine P36. It is a piston filler. You can get them on different shops, but AliExpress has them for about $60 Canadian. For me, it shows up Canadian because I'm in Canada. So whatever that is in your currency. Nib options are extra fine, fine, medium. I couldn't find a broad, but then this one does have a stub. So I don't know if they did that for me as I requested it to review it, or if you can buy them that way. But pretty neat because stubs are fun. It is made out of acrylic and titanium. Who doesn't like some titanium? A lot of people. But it's not their fault that they're wrong. You have about 1.5 to 1.6 milliliters of ink in it. I couldn't measure it very exactly, but I think it's a nice capacity. And you, in my mind, certainly get some cone-head vibes. Here is a cone-head, here is a P36. It's a little smaller, a little less girthy. The clips are reminiscent of each other. I think there should be a fountain pen shootout between the two. Aber nicht heute. So, when are we going to do that? When I have time. Today we focus on this pen. Let's look at the parts of the pen. And bear in mind, I'm just showing you a cone-head. This is not a cone-head filling system, right? It's just a piston filler. Okay. On top, finial, you have nice shiny titanium. And then you have a nice titanium clip, which is it looks a little brushed. Has a nice matte finish, which I really like. It's nice and springy. Then we have, and that's quite different from the cone-head, we have a center band really at the bottom. For cone-head, that's above the acrylic. It says Asvine on one side, P36 on the other. By the way, I'm not trying to harp on this cone-head thing. It was just an interesting coincidence. Now, here we no. It's a great pen though. I really love this pen. Nice ink reservoir. We can see the piston filling mechanism. There's a piston turning knob, also out of titanium. Twist it, this moves down. Twist it the other way, this moves up. Stick it in a bottle of ink as you do it, and you draw up the ink. And this is currently filled with the blood of ballpoint users. Now, cap unscrews. Quite nice, quite solid. Feels like it wouldn't accidentally unscrew. Bear in mind, metal threads on acrylic theoretically could wear down. I don't think I've really had it happen with a pen, but theoretically it could happen. You see the kind of primary, secondary ink chamber thing, but with a piston filler it doesn't really matter. There's a little bit of a gap between the two right now. You can see there's a little clear bit with no ink, but give it a slight shake and the ink is there. With a vacuumatic filling system or something like a Conet, that's a little different. And there is a separator between those two ink chambers, but here there is not, so it really doesn't matter that much. Section is a lovely hourglass shape, which I found very pleasant to hold. It's certainly smaller than a Conet, but then bear in mind my Conet is a king size, so it's bigger anyway. Hourglass shape, very comfortable. These threads are a little sharp when you sort of push down on them like this. When you write and your hand is stable, I haven't found them unpleasant at all. We have a number 6 nib, which has some nice scroll work on it. It says 1.1, and for the width of the stub, an Asvine and a plastic feed. Actually engraved, so not laser engraved, which I think is quite nice, looks quite nice. So this is about the size of the pen. It's not a huge pen, but I think it's a nice size that works for a lot of people. And if I hadn't lost the cap, I could post it. Here we go. It doesn't pose deeply. I'll zoom out a bit so you can actually see it. It doesn't pose deeply, so you get a very long pen that's quite top heavy because of that titanium right there. But if you really wanted to, you could, and it's pretty solid as you post it. I think what we should do is see how the pen writes. Now, that, of course, the ink I have in it's not really the blood of ballpoint users, but it's a yellow ink. I think it is dark enough to show up in reviews. It's not the best for reviews, but I find it very hard when I have a demonstrator pen to not put in a translucent ink, because I really just like the way that looks. And Lamy Mango is a translucent ink, so it's usually, for me, it's that, or it's Star Ruby Red, or something like that. Sorry. They're kind of my videos, though, so, you know. Okay. Asvine P36. This is a stub nib. And the ink, as I said, it looks like it says hammy, but it says Lamy. Mango. Lovely ink. And as you can see, this is not a dry writer. It's really quite pleasant. Okay, I'll come back to the stub in line variation. Stubs always a little finicky because you have to hold them the proper way, otherwise the pen won't really write well. So fast writing is always a little bit more difficult. I'll give it a shot, but it's not my first rodeo. But skips may simply be user error in that case. And I mean, who writes this fast anyway? But I started doing it one day and I have to do it every time. Okay, so works well. Again, this is a very saturated feed. I haven't primed the feed. I've been using it for quite a while. It's just a wet writer. I really quite like that. Is it really wet? What do you think? I think it's pretty wet. Look at just how the light catches the wetness. Okay, line variation. Well, obviously it's a stub, so it should have natural line variation. It has nothing to do with pressure, and indeed it does. As you would expect in a stub, the downstrokes are wide and the side strokes are narrow, and that's exactly how it should be. Does that allow you to do things? Yes, and I don't want to keep you here all day, so I'm going to do this a little fast. But that does mean that a little bit of calligraphy is possible on such a fine 1.1. You're not going to get the most line variation you would get in a much wider nib. But certainly you can do some calligraphy very quickly. This is very poor, but you get the point if you were so inclined. So that looks really nice. Springiness. I mean, there is some, it's not a flex nib, and you already get line variation because it's the stub, so I don't know why you would, but if you really felt like you should, you can exert a bit of pressure and you get even more line variation. But it's not a flex nib, so it could damage the nib, right? Okay. Upside down writing. Usually not very successful with stubs, and this is no exception. There's no tipping on this, so it's ground at an angle so you can write in this position, but this is just a disaster. As you can see, nothing really happens. So it's not possible. Okay, I think that gives us some food for thought. This is now a Gothic unseal mix, apparently. I don't know why, but it is. Some questions we just don't ask. Let's talk about likes. Ew. And dislikes. There we go. What do I like and what do I not like about this pen? There are a couple of things I really like. I like the looks. Clear pens are not for everyone. I quite like it, especially if they have a neat filling system. I think it's really neat that you're able to see that. I just really like it. Some people find clear pens to look cheap. I get it. I don't really suffer from that affliction. I like a clear pen. And what I will absolutely compliment Asvine on is the level of polishing achieved in these pens of the acrylic is impressive because you can see every detail. It looks like crystal. I love it. I like the titanium bits too. Titanium is a fun material. There's something to it, the way it feels, the way it responds to the touch. I just really like it. It feels interesting and it adds a nice weight. With this pen, you have a titanium section and titanium bit at the end. It makes for a very good balance. And I really enjoy that. So I've certainly really appreciated the way the pen was designed. I also like that it's a piston filler. It's a substantial ink capacity. I don't have a super accurate way of measuring this. I just take a sample vial with milliliter markings, and I got to about 1.5 or 1.6 milliliters of ink, which is quite impressive. Remember, converter 0.9 or so. So you get a nice amount of ink and it looks cool. And I like putting a translucent ink in clear pens because I think it looks extra neat. I don't know, it's just me probably, but I like it. So that works really well too. It's a very smooth piston. It's easy to operate. I haven't tried to take it apart yet. I'll see if I can do that. If I can record a disassembly line at some point. It's possible you need a wrench. Maybe I have something that fits. I'll see and I'll let you know. Okay. Final thing I wanted to say is regards to the writing. The nib writes beautifully, and that's really nice. Sometimes 1.1 millimeter stubs get dry just because they're quite broad and they have a high ink demand. In this pen, I have not experienced that. It's been a very consistent, nice writer. The other thing I really love about this nib, and I'll make sure there's a close-up picture on my website, but is that the nib is actually engraved. So not laser engraved, it's actually engraved. Does that make a big difference? Note how I nearly said little. At the end of the day, it's a small thing. However, I find that it elevates the nib a little bit. It just looks a little bit cleaner when something is actually engraved. And the Asvine and 1.1 engraving here to me look really good. So I really appreciate that they do that. I will never hold it against a company if they laser engrave their nibs because it's cheaper and I get it. But if you can not do that and use proper engraving, I think it just looks a little bit neater, cleaner, nicer. Maybe that's just me. Things I don't like so much. It's a phone nib. When you think about it, it's a phone nib. It looks like a cone nib, but it's not the cone nib filling system, and that's, I think, what sets this apart. The cone nib filling system is very cool, and again, Pen BBS has done something similar. There are a lot of moving parts, though. A piston also has some moving parts, but relatively speaking, it's a simpler system. It's easier to use. It's easier to, I don't know if it's really easier to clean. Certainly less parts that can break down. Is it really an issue? I don't know. Nothing wrong with a good piston in my mind. And what I really like about it is if you kind of want to cone it, you probably want it for the filling system and not the looks. But if you kind of want the looks, but you don't want to spend that amount, you can get this pen and you have something that really looks like it, and from a distance everybody will take for a cone head. Now, I'm not getting into the ethics of that. I've done this in the past and it always leads to very heated discussions. People feel very strongly about it and I get it. All I'm saying is, if that's what you want, you can get a cheap pen that looks like a cone head but is not. And there's a different filling system too. That's it. I hope this was useful. A very kind thank you to Asvine for sending me the pen. And I'm glad to see you later. Bye.